Thanks for being here.
Oh, no, my pleasure. Yeah.
Okay, so we both work at Baseten, but how long have you worked here and like what made you choose Baseten?
I joined in June of 2024. So I think that's almost a year and a half, getting close to it. What made me join Base 10? I think the things that really tipped the scale for me in terms of what made it stand out was how transparent the founders were, and specifically about times where they'd iterated on the product and what they've learned from the market, and how they've talked about customers. And they really said that we've like earned the opportunity to do certain things. Customers trust us, right? And so it's like this story of how we're an inference company, but we've earned the opportunity, we've earned the trust to do training with our customers. And that was a specific example they talked about when I was joining. And then it's kind of crazy that, we look back on that, and just like a year later, I was in the thick of it, building the product.
Yeah, that's really cool. How long are you in San Francisco for now?
I'm here for the week. We just launched training, and so I wanted to be here for launch, and then also added some folks to the team. So bringing them on, and kind of like building this out.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so many new people joining us, right? Every single week in the San Francisco office, I see like 5 new people I've never seen in my life, and there's someone sitting next to me I've never met. It's crazy.
It's a little bit of like desk roulette right now.
Yeah.
I think each time I come to SF, which is maybe like once every 6 weeks, I'm taking someone's desk, and I didn't know I was taking their desk because
Yeah.
I don't know what the layout looks like.
Yeah, my desk just got changed again. I showed up and someone else was sitting there, and I was like, "Can I at least have my AirPods real quick before I moved?" Okay, so we just launched training. Can you tell me about it?
Of course, yeah. Where I'd love to start is kind of from that customer journey. And so a handful of our customers came to us, and they've been asking, "Hey, when are you going to build training? When are you going to build training?" We say, "Oh, when it's the right time, when it's the right time." And we had tons of customer interviews, tons of research, discovery done. That was kind of like, I don't want to say sitting. I mean, like, it was sitting around, and they handed it to me. They said, "Here, watch these videos, and go figure out what to build." So I watched a ton of these videos, and what we learned was that, like, actually, if you're not an infrastructure company, it's really hard to get the resources to train these world-class open source models, right? And we heard stories of customers like, "Oh, we're up at like 1 a.m. clicking the add machine button on DWS, waiting and waiting and waiting." And I'd love to just train on base 10. And we're like, "Okay, well, let's figure out what that means." And so a lot of the customers already had training scripts. They had MLEs, and researchers who had worked really hard to get something working and had a pipeline going. And so we said, okay, well, how can we just help them get to base 10? And so what we built was what I like to call like a training infrastructure product. And we kind of started there and said, hey, take all of your working code, no frills, bring whatever image you want, bring whatever repo you want, and come run that on base 10. And we're going to make that really easy for you. We're going to provide storage primitives that help you iterate really quickly by giving you persistent storage so that you don't have to re-download your model and your data sets each time. We're going to give you a pipeline for moving your checkpoints into inference so that deploys and evals end to end can be done seamlessly. And so that was kind of like the premise of the product, and just take those little mini jobs to do those 15 to 30 minute tasks that make a lot of this really slow, and just kind of cut that out.
Yeah, I didn't realize that our customers were actually kind of already asking us to do this.
Oh yeah. I mean, there was Bola who works at Base 10 had done like a wealth of archives with these customers, where he kind of just did some really great discovery. And so a lot of that was just teed up, ready to go. And as we kind of iterated on what the product would look like, we thought about like, oh, should we build a framework? Should we build something like that's like config driven, and then it'll run a training loop for you? And we're kind of like, well, do we have a good enough understanding of all the training that our customers want to do, all the types of training?
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that stood out is like we've built a platform that's flexible, that people who are training audio models love coming to Base 10 and training, like an Orpheus or a Whisper model, because it's something that like these point and click solutions don't really cater to.
How so? So we do different types of training.
Well, I would call it like different mediums, right? And so LLM is like text as a medium, right? But Orpheus is a model that'll do text to speech, right? And so training that is it's not entirely different, but it's not something that I would say like other platforms provide a point and click solution to. And so like I think there was like this flexibility that we leaned into, or we see like people training Orpheus coming to base 10. We see people who need multi-node to train longer sequence lengths coming to base 10. So because we built this infrastructure product and we're not constraining what models you're selecting from, we give people, I think we kind of like opened up a lot of more options for our customers. So like what I mean by that is if you go to certain training sites today, What it'll look like is like a drop down of like model options. And you can train Quen 330B, you can train Llama 370B, right? But if you want to go out of your way, do something experimental, do something that's going to give you a competitive edge because you're not doing what everyone else is doing, you might want to come to Base 10.
And you talked about how it's a point and click solution. Can you talk a
Yeah,
little bit
so
more
I
about that?
think about a lot of like other solutions out there that have existed in the training market as being like just bring your data in and drag and drop it. And I think as like a user experience, that's very appealing. But when things start to go wrong, you want to go a layer deeper, or you might want to go 2 layers deeper. And Base 10 solution is not point and click. Base 10 solution is I think a lot more caters to people who are more hands on. Right. And so when things go wrong, you do get into the code. You are able to debug. You are able to tweak parameters that you gave yourself. Right. We're not limiting you to some set of knobs.
Right, the like built for developers essentially.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You already touched on this a little bit, but I know in the announcement blog posts you talk about not just wanting to create like yet another training product. Can you talk more about how this is different than what else is out there?
Yeah. Yeah. I think when we looked at the market, when we started building this because the market moved so fast, but we really started building this in around March of this year, 2025. What we saw were like a lot of, as I kind of mentioned before, like point and click solutions where you had some set of models that you were kind of like constricted with, right? And you would bring your data and then you would use their training loop and you would train the model. And I think the emphasis there was kind of like, how do we understand give the user more power. So there's a lot of stuff in the market, and I think the ability to position the training product and really build for like build for what I kind of want to say like what we don't know exists, right? Like if you only model the world you're going to like build for yourself. And so we went out, we talked to a bunch of customers, we realized, hey, there's a lot of stuff that they want to do that's not taken care of by existing products. Right. And so I think like that's how we think about, oh, that's like yet another training product, right? It's like, here's this point and click, here's like this set of models that you can only train with these, or you can only do LLMs, right? And I think that's been really helpful to make the product stand out. One of the things that I think has been like really incredible feedback is discussing the integration cost. So like, what is it, or the migration cost? What does it take? So I'm training on GCP today, and I have a really tough time with the training infrastructure set up. I want to use multi-node on H100s, but DWS doesn't support that, right? So that's like a pretty interesting case. So they have like an existing stack and they want to expand somehow. Bringing that code over, bringing that training pipeline over to Base 10 is really simple. And I think that this is where we feel like we stand out, is that we built this with that person in mind.
So it's quick to switch over.
Yeah, quick to migrate over. We're very like unopinionated. So you're not going to run into like a ton of abstractions or SDKs that force you to like mold your thing in the way that we view the world, right? It's going to let you take the world as you see it, or let the code that you have that works today, bring it over to our platform, take advantage of on-demand compute, take care of like storage primitives that are going to make your iteration loop a lot tighter, and just go.
You talked about limitations of other platforms and how we give our customers more power. Can you talk more specifically on different ways we do that?
Base 10 is incredibly good at inference. So what does that mean? I've built a ton of new product when I was at Plaid, but I've never felt like there was a more fertile ground to build new product, because everybody who's on inference at Base 10 is looking to train, right? So what am I trying to say here? Our training product is what we do is we always have inference in mind. It's like, because you're going to train that model, and where do you want to go? Why did you do that? Because you want to serve your customers. You want to build a product that's differentiated. And so I think one of the ways we really stand out is like our pipeline from training into like Base 10's like, I don't want to say flawless. Of course it's not flawless, but like premier inference product is like right there. And I think that makes things a lot easier for users. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's a pretty strong differentiator for us. I think even in the way that we like approach understanding customer problems, right? When we go into a call to talk about training, we actually start at like, what's your inference look like? What do you need for time to first token? What do you need for throughput? What models are you using today? Because this really helps you understand the use case and constrain the number of like viable solutions.
Okay. So understanding like what they're optimizing for with their inference can help you with like the initial training more.
Exactly. Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay, so we launched this week, really exciting. But before we tested like with users, right, and with our customers, can you talk a little bit about some of the early customers earlier this year?
Yeah, so we launched beta in a closed beta on May 19th. And May 19th was a big day for Baseten because we also launched model APIs. And so we had like everybody was in SF. We did 2 product launches. I think like end to end, it's like the most coordinated effort I've seen to like really just go at something hard. And so everyone's busting tail, everyone's grinding, and we all launch on time, and like everything is like an incredible success. And I couldn't believe it. I'm like, oh my God, everything works the first day. What the heck? And I think for model APIs, that was really cool to see. And for training, what was interesting is it was kind of like building it from the ground up. So we were taking customers in like one by one. And I think it was a lot of like, hey, like what do you have today? Are you a good fit? And so and one of the things that was really I would consider a luxury of building a new product at Baseten is we kind of have like this FDE driven like development cycle almost, where we're like deeply integrating with the customer to understand what their stack looks like. And so it helped us find the rough edges of the product, help us find what are the things we need to build that are really gonna like that's gonna help us align what we're building in the product with what we envision taking to market, right?
Yeah.
My biggest learning on this is like how much marketing can actually help shape the product itself and the technical requirements. And it feels almost like taboo to say as an engineer, to say that marketing, to say
Yeah,
that marketing
engineers don't
helps
like
you, right?
saying that.
No, that's like it's like
Sometimes they don't.
you have your like spectrum of folks that you interact with, right? As an engineer, and it's like your product and your PM, and well, you're always gonna denigrate your PM, right? Like every engineer's favorite hobby is blaming the PM.
Yeah.
You take that one
Essentially.
step forward. Oh, then there's the marketing people. Why are the marketing people in my product review? Why do they have opinions about the naming of my API routes? Get out of here, right?
Yeah.
And then one step beyond that is like the salesperson. What is this salesperson doing? You know, like so we're not to the salesperson yet. But when talking with marketing and even with finance, understanding how the positioning of different products in the market and understanding like what message you want to go to the market with,
Yeah.
can really like, I guess like you really internalize what are those things on the in the backlog that are worth moving up, right? Like kind of just one simple example for us is we built this and you're allowed to bring your own image. We kind of like in the beta we're like, oh, at some point we'll build like support for like private Docker images, and that requires just piping in some secrets and ensuring that you're integrating with like private Docker registries correctly on the back end. And the first customer we got, they're like, hey, I've spent an hour plus right now trying to recreate the image that I have that I was using on my previous machine. You said, you know what? Please stop that. We will go build this tomorrow. And so I think this kind of like phased release, kind of like we're going one customer at a time and making sure they're having a great experience. That to me was so magical because at the end of the day, you ship that, you put in your change log, you go DM them in Slack, and they're like, thank you. Yeah, really appreciate that. And I think that type of like product development can go wrong if you're just kind of like zigzagging all over the place. But we had really high conviction about like what our thesis was. And so when you hear these things, it's kind of like, okay, I don't know what the positive version of the straw breaking the camel back. That's like another drop
Yeah,
in the
what is
bucket.
the
I don't
opposite
know
of
what it
what
is.
it
Yeah,
is?
like there's enough momentum behind that now for me to do this with really high conviction and put polish on it as an engineer and make sure that thing is like good to go and it's extensible and you know we're not going to make it hacky because we know this is like an important part of our product, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, like I think that beta phase was something that we did a retro on this actually yesterday, and everyone kind of came out of it like, oh, that beta phase was really good. We learned so much from the market. We made a lot of customers really happy. And it gave us the intel we needed. It gave us the insights we needed to bring something to market that was like very cohesive and well-rounded in the way that everything from the technical decisions we make to the way that we talk about it.
I saw OpenEvidence was one of our early customers. Can you talk about working with them?
Yeah, of course. They're a really early adopter of the product. And what's really awesome is they were able to take like a use case where they were using a larger model and take their specific task and almost distill it into a smaller model. And what this let them do is get their inference time down by like a 23 times improvement in terms of like their end-to-end inference speed. And so like what we're seeing is like this pattern where we're taking, you know, we're proving out some base use case with a really general purpose tool, right? And then we're taking smaller models and figuring out how can we get them to be as performant so that the user experience is just as good, if not better.
Smaller models.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. I think a lot of people think about training and they want to say like, oh, let's train DeepSeek, which is incredibly powerful. Or they want to train like Qwen 235B. And there's a ton of utility and pragmatism and actually saying what is the like minimum viable model we can use that's going to like maintain the quality of our product. So Qwen 3 8B, incredibly powerful model, right? Qwen 3 Coder, incredibly powerful model. And so like when you take these smaller models and you build, I guess, like a more constrained task out of them, they're doing really, really well.
Yeah, it's really cool. Can you talk more about other early customers that we worked with?
I really like Oxen's use case.
Yeah.
So Oxen is a platform actually for fine tuning and serving models, but where they really leaned in is making this, I think, much more user-friendly interface for bringing your data, taking a model, training it, looking at how the model changes as you train it, and then actually doing a really good job of keeping track of what model you're using and what data sets you're using. One of the big problems with, or one of the hard challenges is kind of like data versioning, and they do a really good job with it. And so Oxen actually is built on top of base 10, like end to end. So they've integrated with training and they've integrated with inference. I think one of the things that's been really awesome to see is I think the the Thinking Machines blog posts recently have generated a lot of hype around training, and a lot of people have started coming to it. And Oxen has noticed that too, is that their training partners started to pick up. And as they got more and more traffic, base 10 has just been, I mean, like our product's been like scaling seamlessly. And so I've been really happy with how that journey's gone, where they integrated really early on. We made sure to build the product to not only is it something where you as a developer can use the command line interface you have to kick off jobs, but if you want to integrate in like a platform style, we provide APIs that do everything that the CLI does. So it's a really seamless technical integration to say, I want to build something on top of the training infrastructure, which is what Oxen did. So this is like a little bit different of a use case where you see with OpenEvidence is like a team of researchers really improving their model stack, right? And what you see with Oxen is actually a platform building on top of our infrastructure.
That's really cool. Yeah, so others can do the same.
Exactly.
And you also said we're focused on hiring for the team, scaling the team.
Yes, MLEs, ML researchers, RL researchers, backend engineers, infra engineers, and we're just getting started.
For someone who wants to get started with training, where do they go? What do they do?
Check out the docs of Base 10. There's a getting started guide. And even what I think is even better than the getting started guide is the single command you can run to actually just run a training job. We give you that shortcut at the top of the getting started guide because I know a lot of people want to get their hands dirty. They may not want to, the engineers don't read docs type thing, where they may not want to read through this whole guide. They just kind of want to play with the code and get things going. So both, both styles of development are catered to there. Check out the site, go to the docs, go to getting started. Look at our cookbook, see if there's any models or styles of training, whether you want to do GRPO, SFT, if you want to run with lore, if you want to run full fine tunes, all those are in there. See if there's anything close enough to what you're working with in production to get started and run a trust, train, push.
Great. Well, thanks so much for being here.